Happy Friday, and I want to remind you to vote for this upcoming election. I think it's very important to vote, especially for neurodivergence, because of it being with Kamala Harris and with Tim Walz, and Tim Walz having a son who has NVLD, and also with all the different things that are, coming up in this election, I think is going to be more important than it has been in the past. And with that being said, I'm actually going to do an episode on neurodivergence and voting. And that's what we'll be talking about today. So voting and neurodivergence challenges and opportunities. Neurodivergent individuals often face unique challenges when voting due to factors related to their sensory processing, executive functioning, and social interactions. The difficulties that arise for neurodivergent individuals are not just logistical, but also deeply tied to the accessibility of the voting process itself. For instance, sensory overload is a common challenge for people with autism or ADHD, especially in crowded polling stations where noise and long waits can make the experience overwhelming. Furthermore, executive functioning difficulties can make it hard for individuals with ADHD, dyslexia, or related conditions to navigate the complexities of voter registration, understanding voting procedures, and adhering to deadlines. Anxiety and social interactions also play a role, as neurodivergent individuals may find it challenging to engage in conversations or ask for assistance at polling places, which can add to their stress during the voting process. Despite these challenges, voting remains crucial for neurodivergent individuals. Representation in government is vital to ensure that their voices and experiences are included in policy making, particularly in areas such as healthcare, education, and disability rights. Voting also provides an opportunity for neurodivergent people to advocate for policies that promote inclusivity, accessibility, and the creation of supportive social systems. Accommodations such as early voting, mail-in ballots, and accessible polling stations can significantly help reduce these barriers, empowering neurodivergent individuals to participate fully in the democratic process. The Gus Wallace effect and neurodivergence in public discourse. So before I go on to this part, for me, whenever I vote, I always do a lot of research on what I'm voting on. I read through that handbook that they give you for the props, and I ask my friends what they voted on so I can kind of understand their point of view. Even if I'm not going to vote the way they did, I ask because I want to understand different perspectives and different viewpoints. And I also ask my parents because I basically think in similar ways that they do when it comes to politics, and they better understand politics than I do, so I ask them a bunch of questions so that I can understand what I'm voting on better, and that helps me come to a better decision. So the Gus Wallace effect and neurodivergence in public discourse. The rise of Gus Wallace, son of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, has brought significant attention to neurodivergence, especially after his heartwarming moment at the Democratic National Convention in 2024. Gus, who has nonverbal learning disability, drew attention to neurodiversity on a national stage. His joyful shout out to his father sparked discussions about neurodivergent conditions such as autism, ADHD, and anxiety disorders and their place in public consciousness. His moment in the spotlight, now known as the Gus Wallace effect, has had lasting impacts. The Minnesota Autism Center, which works with neurodivergent children and teenagers to build social and job skills, has reported a significant increase in requests for assessments following Gus's appearance. This increased awareness has led to great conversations and neurodivergence within the community and across the nation. Business owners, in particular, are being encouraged to consider hiring neurodivergent employees as they bring unique strengths and perspectives to the workplace. This shift in perception is crucial for breaking down barriers that have long marginalized neurodivergent individuals. As highlighted by Jen Diedrich of the Minnesota Autism Center, Gus's public display has helped to bring a community that has been hidden for so long into the light. I think that's a very good point because it's basically saying that, even though what Gus has, NBLD, ADHD, and an anxiety disorder, are pretty much invisible to some extent. They are real, and he brought them into light by what his reaction to his father at that rally. And whether he realizes or not, I think he's doing a very positive thing and is making it be, how do I want to say this? Making it be easier for neurodivergents to get the awareness and to be seen and to be heard that they need, and to be able to get the attention that they deserve. I mean, so that they can be diagnosed and that they can get assistance, and not only in school but in other areas like work and personal life. Nonverbal learning disorder, NVLD, understanding the condition. One of the conditions brought into light through Gus Wallace's journey is NVLD, a lesser known but impactful condition. Despite its name, NVLD does mean individuals cannot speak. Instead, NVLD is characterized by a gap between verbal abilities and nonverbal kinds of learning, particularly those involving visual spatial processing. This discrepancy can lead to challenges with tasks that require spatial awareness, such as reading maps, telling time on analog clocks, or balancing budgets. As a result, individuals with NVLD may face difficulties with motor skills, making tasks like writing using silverware or tying shoelaces harder than for their peers. The condition also affects higher order thinking and problem solving, particularly in later stages of schooling, when learning shifts from rote memorization to more complex tasks like identifying patterns and applying concepts. These difficulties can result in challenges with reading comprehension and advanced mathematics, and BLD often overlaps with other conditions like ADHD and anxiety. And it shares some traits with autism spectrum disorder, particularly in the realm of social interactions. People with NVLD may struggle with recognizing nonverbal cues such as facial expressions or body language, and may ask frequent questions to compensate for these difficulties. This can make it challenging to form relationships or navigate social situations leading to isolation or social awkwardness. So that one is just basically giving you more definition of NBLD, which is good because there's no really one agreed upon definition of NBLD. That's why it's not in the DSM. And I wanted to provide an explanation of it. So that gives you a very good explanation of it, actually. And it also gives you an explanation of companies that are trying to bring more neurodivergence on as employees, which I think is a very good thing to do. And being able to do that will, I think it will just enrich your company more, because then you're giving other individuals an opportunity to work with you and to bring things to the team and to the table that neurotypicals may not bring. The importance of policy and support for neurodivergent students. The rise in awareness around NBLD and other neurodivergent conditions has brought attention to the need for better educational support for students with learning disabilities. One of the central issues is the lack of full federal funding for special education. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, ID, was passed in 1975, committing the federal government to cover 40% of the cost of special education services. However, in practice, only about 13% of these costs are covered, leaving state and local school districts to make up the difference. Governor Tim Walz has been a strong advocate for education funding, particularly for special education. In the 2024 two-year budget for Minnesota, Walz approved a 6% increase in per pupil funding and indexed future increases to inflation. The budget also included a significant boost in state support for special education, helping to bridge the gap in federal funding. Advocates across the country have long pushed for full funding of ID, emphasizing that the law is not only about educational support, but also a fundamental civil rights issue, ensuring that students with disabilities have access to public education. The ongoing push for more equitable funding is critical, especially as the number of students with disabilities continues to grow and their needs become more complex. I'm so glad that they're doing that, and I wish I had that when I was in school. The potential for change under a Harris-Walz administration. The issue of special education funding has become part of the national conversation, especially within the Democratic Party. The platform adopted at the 2024 Democratic National Convention calls for fully funding IDEA, prioritizing students with disabilities and supporting the special educator workforce. However, the actual prospects for increased federal funding under a Harris-Walz administration remain uncertain, largely dependent on the composition of the next Congress and federal budget priorities. Despite the uncertainties at the federal level, Governor Walz's commitment to education within Minnesota provides a promising example of how state-level leadership can impact the lives of neurodivergent individuals. His administration policies combined with the national conversation sparked by Gus's appearance highlight the importance of prioritizing special education funding and support services. Neurodivergent students like Gus have unique strengths that can be nurtured with the right resources and support systems in place. Conclusion: embracing neurodiversity. Gus's Gus Wall's public journey has shed light on the challenges and strengths of neurodivergent individuals, from difficulties with social cues and motor skills to remarkable ability to notice details others might miss. His story serves as a reminder that conditions like NVLD do not define or limit a person's potential. Instead, they can offer unique perspectives and secret powers that enrich both individuals and society as a whole. The growing recognition of neurodivergence fueled by figures like Gus and the policies of leaders such as Governor Walz points to a future where neurodivergent individuals are increasingly seen, heard, and supported. With continued efforts to making voting, education, and employment more accessible, we can create a world where neurodivergent people not only survive but thrive. Thank you for listening to this episode.